I love stories for the escape, that you can read about something, you can take a book with you anywhere, especially now because of technology, and just escape. And that's what I always loved about movies. And what it boils down to is I'm obsessed with stories. I always have been, I always will be. So I have hit over 1,000 subscribers and over 4,000 watch hours. I am really surprised, but I have become more confident in front of the camera, and it does certainly feel a lot like just talking to friends. So I thought you might be interested. Hang on, I'm trying to get the sun is right in a really good spot, and I want my bookcase to be showcased because that's a big part of this video. I thought it would be interesting to do like an origin story kind of video. Of course, a lot of people are watching these videos because I have been eating a carnivore diet for 14 months and it changed my life. It's been a very transformative year and a half. I just thought it'd be fun to do like an origin story, kind of. It's pretty dramatic, but a video about, getting to know me better. I don't know. Maybe you'll be interested, maybe you won't. That's okay. I started doing videos after feeling really compelled to tell people about all of the excellent changes that I was, experiencing with, a carnivore diet. For me, that is such a small piece of who I am and that kind of thing. Because in the immortal words of Shrek, I am layered like an onion, right? I've loved and have been obsessed with stories since I was very, very small, very, very young. I had an uncle who was very much larger than life and charismatic, jovial, very, very smart. And he was an auctioneer when I was a young child, gifted orator. I'll sit in a circle around him and he could recite from memory the entire Little Orphan Annie poem that was written in the 1880s. I think 1886 is when it was published by James Whitcomb Riley. So I wonder if that's part of it. I just have always loved stories. Gen X, the forgotten generation, the latchkey kids, I was born in 1975. I am an August baby Virgo. I am the oldest. I'm the oldest child. I only have one younger brother. I have a very, very small family. Grew up in the Midwest primarily and specifically in Indiana. Go Hoosiers. I went to college at Indiana University. My mom was a nurse. She's retired now. So she was always a nurse. She was a nurse, like a hospital nurse. She always worked with kids. She always knew she wanted to be a nurse, and which that would be great. Like her mother always said, that my mom talked about, being a nurse from the time she was like 6. Can you imagine knowing that, what you want to do with your life, from the time you were really young? I've always been like envious of that because I didn't really know. So anyway, my dad says to my mom, hey, I want to be an engineer. My dad was really, really smart, like really, really smart. And in an engineering, physics, chemistry, science kind of way, propulsion engines. He was really, really smart. And so we moved to Lexington so he could go to University of Kentucky when I was in elementary school. And we lived there for 4.5 years or whatever. And then he got a job in Indiana as an engineer. The time I was small, my dad was reading books and reading textbooks, and he was a really big, voracious reader when I was young. And I can remember wanting to be like him, and he, pretending to read. We'd sit together and he'd be reading or studying, and I would be pretending to read too, like reading like this. The first book that I can remember reading was Ramona Quimby, age 8. I didn't like that book very much, but I pushed through and I read it. The first book that I can remember reading, and it kind of sparked this. And so, like I said, I was always obsessed. I've always been obsessed with stories. It really boils down to that. I can't tell a good story, but that's a skill, and I think that I could work on, and it has gotten better. I'm a lot like my dad in personality, and my brother is a lot more like my mom in personality. And as a family, we watched lots of movies and lots of shows growing up, and my parents were great about, they didn't, because, they're boomers, and they did not supervise everything that we were seeing. Obviously, movies were a lot, still, they were a lot different in the 80s, but my parents didn't get too hung up, especially my dad. He did not get too hung up on, coarse language and that kind of thing. I got exposed to a lot of different movies and a lot of his taste. We watched lots of stand-up comics. Oh my goodness. So, and that just really shaped me. We'd go to the movies almost every single weekend until I was in high school. And even after I got married and had kids, as much as I could, we'd go see movies, and we saw some great movies and we saw some terrible movies, like really terrible movies that scarred us. We also saw movies together that you really don't want to go see a movie, with your dad. But it was a great experience. And so I think all of those things came into place just to, create the person I am. The book that my dad encouraged me to read. And I was in high school when I read Brave New World, and I was also in high school when I read Flowers for Algernon. And I actually bought that so that my kids can read it. I'll show it to you. So this was a good book from what I remember. And then they did turn it into a movie. I can't remember I think it was a TV movie. I love TV movies. And so we watched this, and so I'm going to have the kids read it. We're going to work this into our curriculum. I'm doing the homeschool thing now, and I'm really, really excited about it because of the reading part. I think it's important for people to know how to think critically, right? That's something my dad was really good at. You just innately, good at thinking. Like we'd walk in, he'd be doing something, like he'd be sitting on the couch. Dad, what are you doing? I'm thinking, Reading Animal Farm. I didn't have to read that in school. So I just started Animal Farm with my older daughter. My dad also, years ago, read a book by Stephen King. I do really like Stephen King. He is a great storyteller. He can tell a story. He's just one of my favorites. Because of his ability to tell stories. My dad really likes Stephen King too. On the Circuit, it's a really good book. It's called On Writing, and it's a memoir of the craft. So my dad read it, and then I can't remember if he let me borrow it or if he sent me one, because by that time I already, I was married and we lived in different cities. So I have been looking through my own book collection. These bookcases are new, but I thought, I know I still have that book. Well, I couldn't find it. And I want I'm going to have my kids read this book and then write something, because I read it years and years ago. But I cannot remember for the life of me. I cannot remember, like exactly. There's one piece of the book that I remember, and it's about how books can transport you into a different time, like this time travel thing. I really love that. So anyway, I went ahead and bought this for my kids, part of their curriculum, Stephen King. So I was visiting my mom a couple weeks ago because my dad passed 2 years ago. Look at Mom's. Oh my God. Oh no, that's not his writing. That's Stephen King's writing. I thought, oh my God, this is my dad's book. This is the original. So, and the copyright, which I always check the copyright on books and the inscriptions, I thought that was my dad's writing. Okay, I had a moment there. It's not. It's Stephen King's writing. So anyway, this book was copyrighted in the year 2000. I don't think we read this in 2000. In fact, I know we didn't. I don't think we read it until for about 10 years. Anywho, went to my mom's. I'm such a dope. We went to my mom's. I went to my mom's and I was like, I'm going to look for, I was actually looking for a different textbook that my dad had from when he was in college. It was this enormous poetry book, and he really liked it. And I remember that book from when he was at UK. And do you know that I found this copy, his original copy of On Writing? And like I said, I don't know if he let me borrow this or if he gave me my own. I just couldn't find it. But so we have two copies of On Writing, my treasured book from Dad and a new copy for my kids. But that would be so cool. My dad, I've never known my dad to, you know, mark up in books, but I do remember a book that I read as a kid, and this is the second book. This is more scary stories, but I can't find my original scary stories. I don't know if, you know, what happened to it, but I do have this one, and it was, I loved these books. I loved scary books and scary movies and horror from the time I was very young. This one was, the copyright is 1984. Shoot, I was not even 10. And it, you know, it has, oh my gosh, it's got a tag in it. Oh, I wonder, this says to Allison from Nanny and Papa. I wonder if they bought this for me. I was using it as a bookmark. This one's good. When I wake up, everything will be all right. There are scary stories here about a subway car, a shopping mall, and other dangerous places. Are those dangerous places? Were they in 1984? Well, maybe. Anyway, you know, illustrations and everything. You know, several years ago, I don't even know if it was several years ago, but a few years ago, they did a movie on scary stories to tell in the dark. I always like I said, I've always been fascinated by stories and by people. I've always liked James, you know, James Lipton from Inside the Actors Studio. He would interview actors and ask them a series of questions and, you know, take them through. And he would ask them a series of questions at the end. He'd always say, where were you born? When and where were you born? Where were you raised? That kind of thing. And then at the end, he would say, what's your favorite sound? What's your least favorite sound? Your favorite word, your least favorite word. And I love that kind of thing. It's probably why I ended up going to college. I went to IU, and the 2 months before I enrolled, or I was enrolled, but the path I was going to take is, you know, my dad was like, oh, you should be an attorney. And I loved legal thrillers and, you know, that kind of thing. I read The Firm about 100 times. I'm not exaggerating. It was the book that it was my comfort book. Do you have a book like that? And I especially loved John Grisham as an author also. I was a junior, I think, and reading The Firm, and I loved it. So I was going to be, you know, some kind of an attorney. And the summer before I started college, a movie came out, and it was called Jurassic Park. And I saw that movie, and it imprinted on me. And I thought, I want to be like the character that is, you know, Laura Dern plays that character. I want to do that. I want to be an anthropologist. Turns out I did the research. IU also has a very prestigious, very great, you know, great anthropology program. So I was like, oh, well, that's what I'm doing. I did earn my 4-year bachelor's degree from IU in anthropology. Now, I never lived on campus. I didn't make any friends in college. You know, I was a townie. So my parents were like, well, what are you going to do? Like, what's your work going to be? Because, you know, my mom's a nurse, my dad's an engineer, and they're like, how are you going to support yourself and live on your own? And I was like, I don't know. But, you know, it was 1997. I'm like, well, as soon as I graduate, people are going to start knocking on the door. I see that you have a 4-year degree. Let me offer you a job. And my mom, you know, like I said, my mom is a baby boomer, And at the time, this is what people said. You went to college and you just found a job. And, you know, you can never have that taken away. That's education. It's higher education. It's great. And of course, it did teach me some things. It didn't really teach me how to think, but it was a good experience for me, and it was very acceptable at the time. You know, like 4-year degree, anthropology, liberal arts. Everybody's going and getting these liberal arts degree. Never really worked in that because nobody knocked on my door and said, hey, and wanted to offer me a job. And this is at the dawn of the World Wide Web, you know, that kind of thing. There were 4 subsets of anthropology when I was in college in the late 90s. So it was linguistics, is that right? Social and cultural, which I really, really liked those. Archaeology and bioanthropology. My 2 favorite was social and cultural and bioanthropology. Those were my 2 favorites. I hated archaeology and I hated linguistics, which was strange. I thought I'd like those, but I did not do any kind of internships. I did not do anything like that. I spoke to my college course counselor maybe 2 times, and at the end in my senior year, you know, he was like, well, I don't really know you. I just didn't have anything. And you can't just go out and get a job in anthropology. You know, it just basically looks good on your resume. Like, I can check it off. And now 30 years later, I'm like, yeah, it's a fun fact. It's a, you know, it's just a fun fact. So yes, I have a degree in anthropology. I love stories for the escape, that you can read about something, you can take a book with you anywhere, especially now because of technology, and just escape. And that's what I always loved about movies. And what it boils down to is I'm obsessed with stories. I always have been, I always will be. So, all right, thank you for watching this very long, rambling origin story. I hope that you will come and watch more videos that I make. Maybe you're interested in what I'm reading, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I learned from this, and what I learned from this. So, all right, I'll talk to you later. Thank you for subscribing. Bye. All right, I had to come on here. I want to add this to the video. I had to change shirts. It's like 75. It's hot. In our really small bookcase, I found my copy. I found it. So I have my copy, my dad's copy, and then the kids' copy, which I just got. It's the 20th anniversary edition, and it has contributions by his kids, Owen King and Joe Hill, which I really like Joe Hill books too. He can tell a story. I don't think I've read Owen King. I don't know if he's an author. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.